I just found out that I'm the only non-Scandinavian speaker, so you have to bear with me talking in English, but I guess that will be okay, isn't it? Yeah? That will be okay. First, let me start by telling you a bit about my love for this country, for Norway, and the reason why I really wanted to accept the invitation to come here and speak about an issue that I really feel very, very much about. Of course, my love for Norway has to do with many things that loads of people have when you come here, traveling along the coast, for instance, on the Hurtigruten, or visiting Bergen or Oslo, seeing the Lofoten Islands, which are super, super beautiful. But my love for Norway goes a bit further than that. I used to work here, so that's also why I'm trying to understand what you are talking about today. I used to work with a company called Norsk Hydro, which now has another name, and I remember very well that I was working with them in an area that has a great importance to the history of Norway in Rjukan, which is the place where you have this power plant, the first hydropower plant, that has this very, very beautiful history around it. And I was one of the lucky few meeting some of the guys that actually sabotaged the plant in the Second World War, which was a very, very special moment for me. There's another thing that also, I think, brings my country, the Netherlands, much closer to you. And that has to do with the fact that I was a politician at a time, not so long ago, in the city of Rotterdam. I was vice mayor of the city of Rotterdam. And every year, around this time, or a bit later actually, I should say, more like in December, the city of Rotterdam receives a Christmas tree from Oslo, which is a super, super tradition. With this huge Christmas tree, it's really, really, really very big, comes also representatives, of course, of the city of Oslo, the mayor or one of the vice mayors. And then we have, around the celebration of lighting the Christmas tree, which has been given since the Second World War, since Rotterdam was bombed, which is a very huge thing for Rotterdam, of course. Around the lighting of the Christmas tree, we have a celebration, a Christmas lunch in the Norwegian church in Rotterdam. And I don't know if you know the building, you probably don't know, but you know the architects of the building, Mr. and Mr. Poulsen, who've also designed the city hall here of Oslo. It looks completely different. It's a wooden little church, but it's so beautiful and it means so much to the people of Rotterdam that not only we have the church, we have the celebrations, but we have the Christmas tree. And so that all in combination, your beautiful country, my work here, but especially also this relationship between Rotterdam, a city that I have worked for with great intensity, that has so many things that it has to thank the people of Norway from, made it for me an extra opportunity and very welcome opportunity to come and speak to you here. Thank you so much for all that. An applause for you. Yeah. So I'm not going to talk a lot about myself, but just in a. Can we have the next slide, or do I have to do it myself? Whoa. Works like this, huh? No, so there. Yeah. A bit of what I have been doing. I'm actually the CEO of the Public Transfer Company of Amsterdam, was just introduced in the Ministry of Housing and Energy, and I've been a politician, but now, of course, in public transport, which is a great time. I have never been in an industry which is so much in transition as this industry. And I think your minister and also the previous speakers already indicated that there are so many things changing in our world that if we're not going to be super fast, if we're not going to look into that with great closeness, if we're not going to do anything about that, we're going to not survive the coming 10 years as a sector. If we stay the same, it's not going to work. And I think loads of the things that I'm going to talk about were already talked about this morning and are probably going to be repeated by other speakers as well. but the only thing I want to leave with you is this great importance that we, from the public transport sector, are going to do something and are going to do something together in order to make sure that we will not die. And this thing about how important it is to do something has also a relationship with the fact that I worked in the energy sector. And many of you know that about 15, 20 years ago, in the traditional energy sector, so the producers of coal and oil and gas, loads of them were thinking that the world would still live on fossil fuels for a long time. So there were companies in my country, in Germany, in France, and everywhere else who were saying, well, renewables, nice. We'll put a few solar panels there and a windmill there, and we'll do a little bit of that. We're not going to stimulate it a lot because we have these traditional ways to generate power. We like the way that we're doing it. We like to stay as we are. And all of these companies have very difficult times right now. Some of them are actually here in Scandinavia, most of them in Germany, France, and also in the Netherlands, and they just looked away from the changing world. They looked away from the fact that the world of energy was changing. And this is, I think, something that we need to keep in mind when we look at all these new forms of transport that maybe somehow seem alienate to us or do not relate to us a lot. Because if we do not really look at them, if we're not going to cooperate, work together, make sure that we do things, probably we're going to end up as some of these energy companies in Western Europe that have not survived. Just a little bit about my company. I'm not going to dwell on it. We are just a very classic public transport company. We have buses and trams and metros and ferries, and we've been around in Amsterdam for over 100 years, do it with great pride. We have a lot of customers every day using the system, going through the system, and probably some of you have already visited Amsterdam and you will know that this public transport system is used by many of us, apart from the people that use bicycles, which are also a lot of them. So about 50% of everybody is cycling through Amsterdam, and most of the rest are using public transport. A bit on these kind of general trends that were discussed already this morning. So yes, we see cities that become more densely populated. Basically all around the world, we see them here, we see them in the Netherlands, and we see that these densely populated cities also have a demand for making sure that they are nicer places to live. And of course, we see this trend, it was talked about this morning already by my previous speakers, that there's all these new forms of transport that are coming up. From driverless cars on the one extreme, I think, to all kinds of shared mobility in Uber and car. You have seen already the slides. And all these ways and new forms of technology are coming up and are there probably to stay, probably to grow a lot more. And that means that we have to see how we're going to change in the coming time. And that's something that I would like to talk to you about in terms of what we are doing to do that. Just from all this, you see that these dense cities that I talked about are basically needing or are in need of seamless connections, of simple and also collective forms of transport. And they need to be more connected, they need to be more seamless, they need to be more integrated. And already you've seen also the same logos. It's kind of nice to see that all the companies that we are worried about or that are working like Car2Go or Uber or Google are already the companies that you're also talking about. So probably we're a bit in the same ship here. It is really like that we have to think about how to make sure that we are going to work together with them because we see customers use it. So what did we do? We see this trend of more densely populated cities in the Netherlands, basically in all the world and certainly in Western Europe. We see all these new forms of transport coming up, shared mobility from bicycles to cars to Uber to all of that. So one thing that we did, and it wasn't really easy, I don't know if public transport companies around here are working very closely together, but in the Netherlands, we're not. We try to work together, but somehow we're also kind of competitors, and there's the ones that are actually supported by, still owned by governments or local governments, and there's the ones that are in the market, but we weren't working together very closely. But the fact that we are now facing all these changes actually made us think again and made us make a new plan, a vision on how we would like to organize mobility in the Netherlands. This is not a plan that was made by a ministry or by the government. This is a plan that was made by the public transport companies themselves. And it was quite a struggle to get them all sitting at the table, but we managed to do it. And the plan is super simple and looks like stuff that you've seen this morning already. But it's important that it's going to fly, and that's why I'm going to talk a bit about the plan, but also how we're going to make it fly. So what we believe needs to be done is that public transport needs to work together with all these forms and modes of transport. Why do we need to work together? Because we need them, but also they need us. I am sure that without our companies working together, they will not be as successful as they will be. For instance, look at the automated cars. There's no way that you can have everyone living in Amsterdam sitting in an automated car, in a driverless car, going around the city, because there's not enough space. I don't know, anyone, you've been in Amsterdam once? Kind of, the canals and stuff, all these historic city centers. There's no way that everyone that goes through the city, so I'm already transporting about 800,000 people a day, no way that they are all going to be around in their own driverless car. Unless, of course, you do something that was on the screen in Singapore, not going to work, I think, in the city of Amsterdam, and probably not here or in Stockholm or in Copenhagen. I'm sure that it's not going to fly. So what you definitely need to do is make sure that you cooperate. But first of all, how does it need to look like? So you need very good and fast connections between the densely populated areas, so city areas. I'll talk a bit later about less dense populated areas, but between the centers of cities, so you see one there, you see one there, you need very fast connections. So high-speed trains that go very frequently, that make it very easy. And what we said, and this is something, of course, that has to do with the geography of the Netherlands, but you can change that. So between cities, there needs to be at maximum 30 minutes commute. So these high-speed connections need to be very, very fast. They need to make sure that you have very closely connected cities. And then, when you get into the center of a city, you need to have all these modes of transport that are connected together that can get you where you want. So that could be traditional buses or metros. That could be, of course, more new forms, Uber or Drive Now, or we also have in the Netherlands, I don't have it here, but it's Snapcar, so it's a kind of sharing system where you use your own car in the system, all these things. But that also means that inside the city centers of these densely populated cities, you need to make sure that it's not going to be all these little companies that are going to do it. You need a real strong backbone, which is a metro system, a light rail system. So between the cities, faster, smaller ones or more light rail systems inside the cities, and you need at these stations or different stations or places, you need to work together with all these connecting stuff. And one of the things, for instance, that we're doing in Amsterdam is making sure that we're going to develop the stations. I'll talk about that later, in order to make sure that you are able to move from one mode of transport to another. Fast connection between cities, make sure that also these connections are good inside the cities. And as number two, I said, you need to make sure that you also are have the possibility to reach lower density areas. Of course, this is quite different from here in Norway, where you have super not densely populated areas, or at least in comparison to the Netherlands. But also in the Netherlands, you have areas where there's not a lot of people coming. So a bus moving around there, which they do today, usually is half empty or a quarter empty, which is of course not what you want. You want something else. You want a more on-demand form of traveling. And of course there is this very great need, if you want this all to work, and not only that it's comfortable and easy, it needs to be very high quality. It needs to be with very clear information. Already talked about today is about these systems where you have the mobile phones that need to be together. It also needs to be very easy in terms of payment. Just one system would be very much nicer than all these different things that where you pay with different tickets, different whatever use of mobile phones. And of course, it needs to be highly sustainability. There needs to be high sustainability, zero emission, low energy consumption, and so on and so forth. So this is the plan that we made. This is a plan that probably is very much in line also with what you saw earlier today. Fast connection between cities, loads of light rail systems within the cities, comfortable and easy traveling, connected to all these new modes and forms, and make sure that it's definitely very, very sustainable. For Amsterdam, we actually designed how that is going to look like, and this is something that I of course speak about with the city government. My company is not a part of the city government, we're a separate entity, and therefore I talk to them a lot about these ways, but it's not the city government that decides where I'm going to be or where I'm going to drive and so on. So basically this is all about how can we make it easier to travel through Amsterdam. I'm not going to dwell on this too long, but basically, you know, as zooming in from this larger thing that we made together with all the transport companies of the Netherlands, in Amsterdam it means that we're going to expand the metro network, needs to be rapidly expanded. The city is going to be twice as big in about 20 years as it is today in terms of number of inhabitants, people working there, people coming to visit the city. We need this working very closely also on making sure that we have better stations. We need to work on all these different modes that are coming in, bike sharing, park and ride facilities, all these things need to be worked at very, very, very closely. And expanding a network is something that is of course something that the city has to work on together with us, because we cannot do that on our own. But if you don't expand it, it's definitely going to make sure, we're definitely going to be stuck in the city. Interesting enough, the City of Amsterdam has done a study on automated cars, and they came to the conclusion that automated cars are not going to work inside the city. So they want to have a system where you have all these park and rides, basically say you come with your driverless car to the city and then change to another form of public transport. This is very interesting because loads of people believe that automated cars are really going to be something that is going to be inside city centers a lot. It's not going to be working, not at least in the coming time in Amsterdam. So to make this all work, you need to invest, do you think it's working? Yeah, you need to invest in stations, so places where you transfer from one mode of transport to another. And that means that you really need to make sure that these stations become nicer places to be. Well, I've arrived, of course, yesterday in the railway station here, which is super nice, and there's many railway stations that are very, very, very beautiful, but they need to be, you know, very fast, where you can very fast walk, where you have places where you can store your bike or park it and use it. There needs to be these taxi spaces integrated with Uber. You need to make sure that you have charging stations. They need to have all kinds of facilities that you already see. You have to make sure that stations become far more a luxury kind of place to be, and a place where you actually don't want to be. One of the things, of course, that is the greatest challenge for us in public transport is make sure that people like us more than they like their own car, which is something that is not super easy, or at least not in the Netherlands. And I understand you are also a car lover, eh? That I got right? Yeah. So forget about it. In a time you will not love your car as much as you will love us. This is what we're going to do. So yes, it needs to be far more attractive. And then, of course, you need to work on all these combinations and make sure that you have integrated planning systems, make sure that it's super easy to transfer from one to another. This is an example from Germany, very nice, where you have even integrated an integrated travel system that includes airplanes. So it's really, really something that we need to work on together. Make sure that it's very easy to transfer, but also you have all the information to do it. And also important is making sure that you have these integrated ways of paying. And of course, today it's sometimes with these kind of Oyster cards that you have in London, or the OV chip card that we have in the Netherlands. Very stupid name. But then again, it needs to be something that is probably on your bank card or on your mobile phone. So super easy to check in and check out. Go and use all kinds of forms of transport, whether it's a train or a bus or a metro or a shared car or a shared bike or anything that you would like to use. All this combined and working together. And of course also in an international context, one of the nicest things about Uber is, I don't know if you use it, but I use it quite a lot, is that I can, whether I'm here or in Amsterdam or in New York, I'm using the same system, I'm using the same stuff. So yeah. That's really what we need to work on. And then there is this, of course, cry out from me to make sure that everything is made from zero emission, done in a very sustainable way that you already talked about today as well. So loads of things about electric buses, but also make sure that they're not only zero emission, but also they consume very little energy. And that is something that we are also working on. We have indicated we're going to change our complete bus fleet into zero emission, which is actually more or harder than I thought it was, because they need to, of course, run in a system where they have to run 24 hours per day. But this is definitely what needs to be done. And it will be done by us by sourcing from renewable energy sources that are going to be guaranteed new ones. So not renewable energy from sources that were already there, but sources that we are going to newly build, and make sure that it's all super sustainable. So getting back to where I started, we have, I think, a quite joint vision about the fact that the public transport sector is changing, that public transport is changing. We have a joint vision about the fact that all these new forms and modes of transport are somehow going to play a role, and that if we want to survive, we need to work together with them, and they will need us. So that is something that we need to keep in mind. Now we need to make it work. We need to make sure that we're actually going to speak to Google and Uber and all these car share companies to make sure that we are going to cooperate. And that's what every public transport company, I believe, in Western Europe needs to do. If we don't, we're not going to survive. If they don't, they probably will not all be very successful, or at least not as successful as they can be. But that needs to work. This cooperation is very important and needs to go and work. We have been able in Amsterdam to cooperate with Uber. We are working together with Car2Go, we're working together with Snapcar, and we're making sure that we make transfers from one mode of transport to another super easy. But we need to do that even better. We need to work together on more collective information systems. We need to work together on payment systems. We need to work together a bit more on making sure also that we have the right investments that are done, be it in stations or in light rail connections or stuff like that, that do that together. And then, of course, we need to make sure that also we as public transport companies work together. We made this joint plan in the Netherlands. It was quite hard to do. But for instance, in UITP, which is our international branch organization, we need to make collective plans to make sure that we are going to survive and not be dead in a while, like some of the energy companies that really didn't recognize in time that renewables were coming. So there's lots of things that we have to do. And I am very inspired by the fact that we have all these opportunities. We are in a very moving world. We are in a world that is changing. We're no more in a world where you just drive from, you do one bus line, or you do one metro, or you do one train system. There's no more this world. We need to make sure that we are ahead of it. And I like to say that I'm happy that I'm here. I'm hoping to speak to you further throughout the day, also how we can do this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander, for a very inspiring speech.
Thank you.
You know, my favorite singer, she's from Netherlands.
Yeah?
Treintje Oosterhuis.
What's that?
Treintje Oosterhuis?
Ah, Treintje Oosterhuis.
Yes!
Yeah!
Treintje, that's a beautiful singer. We have a little present
she
for you.
She was in the Eurovision contest, I think.
She was?
Yeah, she was last year or the year before, and she lost miserably. Yeah.
I don't watch TV any longer. That's also something of the new things. We don't watch TV. We have a little present for you.
Thank you.
Because of you, we give a donation for the Save the Children organization.
Cool, thank you.
And we have some handmade chocolate made and inspired by one of the most beautiful mountains in Norway, the Dovrefjell. Not Rjukan, but Dovrefjell.
Ah, that's really something. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.